All right. I know this is a curious group, so I'm sure somebody has a question or a reflection. Let's hear it from you. And thank you so much, Vanessa. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
More applause. More applause.
Hi, Vanessa. Ted here. I just wanted to comment that the beginning of your talk kind of made me more aware of, kind of how toxic unpredictable experience like you described is to just trust with another person. It diminished trust as well as the other things you
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Because thank you for saying trust, right? Because the trust was so damaged between us and so harmed, which is why I wasn't able to reconnect and reestablish that relationship going forward, right? And the relationship that she and I had was one that was within a larger group of friends. So then, like after some time, people would be like, hey, what's going on with you two? And so on. And outsiders, external people would really try to say, oh, you should try talking to them again. You should try this and that. And like really emphasizing trying to reconnect. And there were many times that I went back to the diagram and I kept checking in with myself, like, okay, it's been X amount of time, let me see how I feel. What's my body telling me? What are my behaviors telling me? There were even times, I think I mentioned like a year later, where she messaged me. And I can remember that feeling in my body. My body was like, whoop, that tension came right on back. And again, I started with what my body was telling me, and I navigated through the rest of them. And I was able to deepen my understanding that said, no, you're good in that decision that you made, Vanessa. It's okay. You don't need to reconnect just because this person reached out, right? You don't need to reconnect because these other people are like, oh my goodness, but your friendship was so beautiful. It absolutely was. Absolutely was. I don't let the tail end of our friendship, cast clouds over all of our friendship. But I'm also not going to let, that breaking of our trust to continue, right? Like that was too big, too pivotal of a life experience to bail on. So thank you for saying that. Trust. Is there a question in there?
There are some reflections.
Do you mind reading them? Because I really can't do my
thing. Yeah. Eva appreciates the diagram and how each aspect impacts every other one. And Randy says, curiosity within, it's not linear, and don't shame yourself when it doesn't come clear right away.
Love that. Don't shame yourself when it doesn't come clear right away. True.
Yeah.
True. Be patient with yourself and continue to check in and be curious. Because again, it's the way we speak to ourselves internally impacts, because that's our mind, it then impacts how we're feeling and how we show up and what's happening in our body. So patience and calm is so, so important. And also permission, right? Like permission to be able to pivot and reassess and reevaluate. And that's exactly what I did over probably the course of maybe 1 to 2 years after I moved.
Wow. Yes. Patience is important so that we respond instead of react. Vanessa, we had a question from the audience that Lee has on the side, and I thought it really does relate to predictability. So let me read this question. And for those of you who love the questions in the chat, Coach Lee will drop that in there too. So it reads, as someone who doesn't want kids, I could use help adjusting to my friends having kids and how their priorities have shifted so drastically. It's understandable, but it's hard. Also hard when friends get new partners and seem more appreciative of spending time with me when they're single. But once they get a partner, their priorities shift so drastically and they don't seem to have time for me anymore. So this definitely, parents are less predictable friends. And when we're in new relationships, often there's a predictability issue there too. What would you say to them?
Going back to the diagram, right? This person's now having some thoughts around how they can show up in those relationships and how those people are showing up for them, right? And so starting off with that thought process, seeing how you feel about it, right? Because then you'll be able to assess what your body's telling you and if it's impacting and how it's impacting the way that you show up in those relationships. Or maybe it's you meet a new friend and you're now hesitant because you heard, like, they've got a number of kids and you're hesitant on moving forward in that friendship because you're like, I already kind of have an idea how this is going to go, right? And so by going back into our self-awareness, we can check in and see kind of like, what are the hiccups? What are the pieces about, when someone's starting a new relationship, or my friends that have kids, what is it that I feel like I might be missing or needing? And again, how is it shifting how I'm showing up in those dynamics, right? And it's by checking in on those gaps, wherever it might be, that can lead you towards a place of where do I need to be curious, right? And then where do I need to be curious will ideally be able to kind of like give you a little bit more of a foundation and an idea that you can then turn it into hopefully a constructive conversation with that person or those people, right? And not saying like, oh, you're dating somebody new again. Like this is that point where you go MIA on me and I don't see you for 3 weeks. And if it doesn't work out, then you magically appear and you want to hang out. We're not going to communicate it like that. But what we could say is recognizing the impact of this person having a new relationship. Like, hey, I'm super excited for you. I see that you're really interested in this person. And I just want to label that sometimes I feel a little left out and I don't get to see you as much when you're dating someone new. And so I want to see if maybe we could put our heads together around what we could do differently, because I value our friendship and I really miss you when we go X amount of time without hanging out or without talking.
Nice. Comes back to curiosity and self-awareness. I like it. All right. I'm going to bring Tay in with you. Tay has her hand up. Go for it, Tay.
Hey there.
Hi.
So I had a question, and I guess more like of a little like short story, but like also, so the situation that happened with you kind of reminds me of a situation that happened between me and some friends from college. And it was more so, we can say that it was more so on me. I very much related myself in that time as the rebel friend, because I am very spontaneous. I kind of just like do and be, but I also was that friend that did not ask for help. So usually a lot of times my friends and I would have these good times, and then there would be a like drop for me, and I'd be like, oh my God, despair and dismay. And somebody like, I didn't really want the help, but by the time it got to that point, it was like, there was nothing else for me to do. I was a, pile of tears on the floor. And what ended up happening was after I had gotten married, I had a really bad situation. I got a cornea ulcer in my left eye and almost lost my eyesight. Like it was a whole thing. And in that time, none of my friends, they all knew what happened because they were at my wedding. This literally happened at like the day before my wedding. And they all knew what was going on. But then like after that, they kind of just like fell off and didn't like check on me, like, or anything. Like it was almost like I still had to call them as a way to interact or, anything. And so what ended up happening was there was a lot of stuff going on in my marriage. And at that point, I think before my marriage, I decided like, I didn't want to be the rebel friend anymore. I didn't want to just be every time something's going on, I'm coming to you for this, because that's how I felt I was as a friend. However, when I changed that, which by the way, that was my predictable behavior in that friendship, when I changed that, it seemed like it became a problem, because it was almost like it was almost like they also felt like they no longer had a place, because I was no longer asking them for the help, if that makes sense. Like things were crashing and burning around me, but then I didn't come to them for that help anymore, because I was trying to figure it out on my own. And then later it became, well, we want to know about the good things. And I was like, there were no good things. That's why you didn't hear from me. And that friendship ended. And I wondered in that case, like when the person who is going through the change and realizing how their friendship affects that friendship, like how somebody would, are those friendships still salvageable? Like, obviously this has been many years and I'm actually happier where I am considering my life now, but are there ways in those moments to help them to understand, like, there is this change happening and I want to still be friends with you, but I'm trying to redirect and figure out what that new predictability pattern looks like, and not like the old one? Like, is there a way to have that shift, if that makes sense?
Thank you for sharing that. That does make a lot of sense. And what you're talking about is kind of what I alluded to just a little bit in saying at one point, that there are some friendships that are salvageable after someone has been unpredictable. And there's sometimes where they're not, like for my example, because that hit one of my boundaries that said, this isn't okay. I'm not good with this at all. Right. And so it's hard to make a blanket statement, because it does depend on each relationship and each dynamic. But for me, it really comes down to, how do I make sure I have a good, solid understanding, as much as I can in that moment, of my mind, body, emotions, and behaviors, right? And do my best to communicate some of that to this friend, right? Like, how do I say to you, I've been noticing and reflecting a lot over these last X amount of time, these last years, in how I've been showing up in my relationships and how I've been showing up for myself, right? And I say myself because you talked about not really wanting to ask for help until everything's like on fire, right? And I want to show up differently for myself. I want to show up differently for you. And I'm telling you all of this because I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go, but I value our friendship. And if it's okay with you, are you on this ride with me? Right? Like, can you support me through this? And I'll do the best that I can to continue to show up as the best version of myself, for myself and for you. Right? So it's a couple things that I said in there. Stopping first and checking in with your own alignment and awareness, using that as a piece of communication to bring in as you're talking to this person or these people. And then we really have to pay attention to, what are their responses? Are you supportive? Are you not? Are you angry? So on and so forth. Do a recheck of your system. If someone says they're good with this change and they're here to support you and so on and so forth, we give them that time to show up in whatever way it is that we need. And then we reevaluate again. Are they actually doing it? And like, what direction do we go on? Do we remain friends? Or you said you wanted to show up for me, but it really isn't landing well in my system. And then we part our ways. How does that land with you, Tim?
It lands very well, actually. Of course, after this happened well over 8 years ago. And that's something that the things that you described, you know, checking in with yourself, seeing where your boundaries are, where you have changed and grown and things like that, is something that I'm currently going through now with partners and friendships and things of that nature. And so it hits really well. But, you know, I always wondered that, like, before, like if that was something that could have changed. I was not as aware as I am now. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah. It also speaks volumes of you saying, like, I'm really good with where my life is right now. Right. And that it has been some time. So when those questions come up of like, should I have done something differently, so on and so forth, is what was happening to me up to a year, almost 2 years after that friendship. And I just kept reassessing and seeing how things were landing with me. And a good chunk of the time, it came back as, you made the right decision. You're doing okay, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Or are we at time? Almost at time. I value our friendship and I really miss you.
Some good advice. I think that answered well too to the previous question, you know, just saying, hey, things are changing in my life. Are you on this ride with me? Is this okay with you? You know, can you ride these waves of change and unpredictability? Because I want the friendship itself to stand. Yeah, that's beautiful. Any other questions for Vanessa? Her details are in the chat. So go, you know, do some following. And I'm wondering if,
don't be greedy, share with the homies.
share Vanessa with your world. And I think I probably am not the only one who would love that diagram. If you would share that, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll drop it in the chat.
Perfect. Cool. Any other questions, comments, reflections? If not, just send some love to Vanessa in the chat. Maybe another round of applause, Coach Lee.
Yes, some round of applause. I was going to have a reflection. I was going to say something though, really quick.
Perfect.
You know,
Sure.
because I was that person who was unreliable and very not predictable. I would RSVP to things and just not show up at the last minute. I would say, yeah, I want to go, but then I wouldn't. And I definitely know that there's some insecurity that happened in there, you know, me being insecure about they really want me to be around and such and such. And I was the person who got into a relationship and I didn't want to talk to anybody after. Like my friends disappeared until I emerged from the relationship. And so I was just reflecting on the fact that I was that person and there was nothing that, you know, you as a friend could say to me that would mean me like that in that moment when I was being unpredictable. There was nothing you as a friend could say to me that would make me change per se. Like you tell me you're recognizing your own feelings about how I might show up you as a friend. I'm the unpredictable friend to you, Vanessa. You recognize your feelings, how I might not show up. And even if you express those to me, because this happened to me, people have expressed that to me. And I still was like, I'm going to be unpredictable. I'm not going to be that person. And so I shared that because you have to take care of yourself. I think you can express what you said. Like definitely it took me, I appreciate it when people would tell me how I've impacted them, but I didn't get it in that moment. I didn't. It took some time to understand, oh, this is what they're talking about. Because then it happened to me, not people not showing up for me. And I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like. Oh, I did that last time. Oh, this doesn't feel good. You know, so I just wanted to share that and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for that. Yeah, because we're talking about multiple people. So I can do all the self-awareness and boundary setting and so on and be as communicative as possible, but it still also depends on how this person is doing, where they're at, their ability to reflect and check in on their systems too. So we have to leave room for that piece and also be prepared for if that person's not in a space to make the changes or go on this journey with me, that I'm giving them the permission to say, I can't do this. or I don't want to do this. And that's okay.